Hi, everyone. Welcome to our final webinar for the BCAC Youth Learning series. I'll be your host, Alicia. I can't believe we're coming to an end with this initiative that we launched back in June. Time has gone by really fast. So for this last webinar, we decided to switch things up and have more of a Q&A interview with a very inspiring guest, Teara Fraser. I'm extremely lucky to have worked beside Teara early on in my career and seen her venture onto new journeys and tackle new challenges fearlessly. I can truly say that she has impacted my career in the most positive way by supporting women like myself and setting them up for success. I would not be where I am if it wasn't for her mentorship, which I'm truly grateful for. Today, we'll dive into Teara's inspirational story and discover how COVID-19 has challenged and altered Iskwew Air's flight path. We'll get Teara's thoughts on being featured in the DC Comics graphic novel and find out what it means to dream it, design it, do it. For those that missed our previous webinars or would like to rewatch them, please visit the BCAC website under the Resources tab and select the links. If you have any questions for Teara, please submit them into the chat. We will take some time at the end to answer your questions from the audience. And as we wrap up the learning series, we'd love to hear your feedback on which topics you enjoyed, if you'd like us to continue hosting webinars, and anything we can improve on. Please leave a comment in the chat or email us at info@bcaviationcouncil.org if you'd like to give us some feedback. Lastly, before we begin, a quick reminder that the webinar will be recorded and to please turn off your mics. Thank you. Teara Fraser became the first ever Indigenous female to own an airline in Canada when she launched Iskwew Air last year on International Women's Day. She is a trailblazer in the aviation industry, strongly advocating for women to pursue careers in aviation and aerospace. Teara is a proud Métis bridge builder, is a commercial pilot and former CEO of BC Aerial Survey, an air operation that she built from the ground up in 2010. Earlier this year, Teara was named one of Canada's 2020 Top 25 Women of Influence and one of the Women's Executive Network 2019 Canada's Most Powerful Women Top 100 Award winner. Most recently, it was announced that Teara has been selected as one of the 18 women featured in the upcoming DC Comics graphic novel titled A Wonderful Woman of History. Teara also holds a Master of Arts in a leadership degree from Royal Roads University and is a certified executive coach. So please welcome Teara.
Hello, everyone. I'm having such a great time already. I see some beautiful friends on here that I haven't seen in a long time, and it's just making my heart sing little rainbow and sunshine. So it's good to see everyone that's here, and thank you so much for inviting me, and thank you for being interested in hearing a little bit of my story.
Of course. So let's start from the beginning. Tell us about how you got started in aviation and what was your first job?
All right, so since we're starting at the beginning, I hope everyone has a cup of tea and a blanket. So starting at the very beginning. So I'm a proud Métis woman. I was born in Hay River, Northwest Territories. My Métis roots come from my Fraser family, who has been in Fort Chipewyan, Northern Alberta, for generations and generations and generations. And I was raised. My dad died when I was three and a little bit, and he's where my Métis roots come from. And it'll make sense why I'm positioning this and talking about where it is that I come from. I was raised more we moved around a little bit, but in the interior of British Columbia. I spent most of my growing up years in Quesnel, where I was pretty sure I was voted least likely to succeed in life. Like, for sure that was like the award I got. And then I moved down to Vancouver as an adult and started my family early. I was a young mom, And so in my 20s, I worked entry-level jobs and had 2 kids, and then I was it was right around when I was 30. I should actually just figure out exactly when that was, but around 30, I was like, this kind of seems like, what is there in life for me, and it feels like there must be more. But I didn't have any post-secondary education. I was a single mom with 2 kids. And so I thought about what I needed to do. And I went and sat cross-legged in the Chapters bookstore in the self-help section, which is what you should do if you need self-help. And somewhere in one of those books, it said, suggested to write a bucket list. And so I wrote a bucket list, and on the top of the list was to go see the zebras and the giraffes in Africa. So I didn't have a lot of means, so I saved and I saved and I saved and I saved to go to Africa. And because for someone like me, that just seemed an impossible thing. Like, that just didn't seem like something that was possible for someone like me. And I saved and I packed my great big mountain equipment co-op yellow backpack, and I had my immunizations, and I was set to go to Africa, October 22nd, the October that followed 9/11. So most of you here will remember what it was like to be in the world just weeks after 9/11. And traveling to Africa certainly didn't seem like a good idea. But I had worked so hard, like I had made this impossible thing possible. And so, much to a couple of my aunties' chagrin, probably still, off I went anyways, because there was this quote from Oprah Winfrey that said, listen to your heart, but often it whispers, so listen carefully, or something like that. I'm not doing it justice. And I just knew that I had to go. And when I landed in Nairobi and I made that impossible thing possible, then that's when everything else became possible. So on that trip, my first time in a small airplane was an aerial tour over the Okavango Delta. And the pilot was banking the aircraft and showing us the animals and telling us stories of the land. And I was like, shit, this guy's got the coolest job literally ever. And so I came down from that flight and I was like, I want to do that. And then, that voice, the one that you all have, that kind of limiting beliefs voice that was just like, okay, sweetie, honey, let's review. You are 30 years old, you're a single mom with 2 kids, you have no education, you have no access to any financial support. It's just 9/11's happened, the entire industry is in a shambles. And that's just not something that is possible for someone like you. And then a couple weeks down the trip, I went skydiving, and I can tell you everything about the moment that we taxied out on that skydiving trip, my second time in a small airplane. I can tell you what everybody was wearing, what it looked like, what it smelled like. And I wanted to touch everything. I wanted to touch everything on the dashboard. I wanted to know like what everything did, what everything meant. And I felt this feeling inside. I can feel it right now as I'm sharing this story with you. This, like, my whole body come to life. I can feel the little butterflies in there right now as I'm sharing. And I can tell you everything about that moment because I said to myself, I don't care what it takes. You're going to fly airplanes. And so I came home to Canada and I started my flight training. And in less than a year, I had a commercial pilot's license in hand.
That's so badass. Yeah, that's amazing that you decided to take that leap of faith and go down a completely different path that you felt that you weren't that you were almost destined to go down. So that's really cool. So then what made you decide to start your own aerial survey company, KISIC, and what did that process look like?
Yeah, so when I decided to start my own, I had flown some photo. I think there's at least one controller on here, so I was Photo Charlie 2 for quite some time, and then I went off and did some other flying. But we, experienced a downturn in the industry, and this is hilarious. I know I don't know what's happening with the recording. Is it like going out into the world, or is it just for these folks here?
It'll be shared on YouTube.
Okay, thank you. It's always good to ask these questions. Um, so yes, okay. The so we had a downturn in the industry. You can see applying filter. Don't say that. It's going out to the public. And when I looked around, I couldn't see a small operator that I thought I wanted to go to work for. So I decided that I had experience. My partner at the time brought a lot of great technical expertise, and KISIC Aerial Survey began. I didn't have any business background. I just knew that I didn't really want to work for someone else, and the options that I saw around me just weren't as appealing. I mean, now when I look back, it makes perfect sense. Like, I was born to be an entrepreneur, but I didn't know that at the time. I just wanted to really be able to kind of design and decide on my own destiny. And I suppose, one of my isms, I call them isms, dream it, design it, do it, is probably started all the way back then, right, with the pilot's license. Just dream it, I dreamed it, and then I designed it, and then I did it. And then with the aerial survey company, yeah, it's just like, okay, well, how can I put to work my skills and my expertise, and the idea of, like, it's quite an adventure to start your own company and build it from the ground up. If you've always had a job, it's really difficult to imagine the challenges and the rewards and the response. Like, you can't quit. You can't just get pissed off one day and quit your job, or decide that it's not for you anymore. Like, you're super duper in it. And so I really appreciate my years with KISIC Aerial Survey, and I'm so proud of the team, many of which are still there contributing. And even though I sold it in 2016, the culture that we cultivated and curated and cared for years is very much still a part of the way KISIC Aerial Survey operates. KISIC is a Cree word for both eye and sky, which I thought was pretty darn clever for an aerial survey company.
Definitely. So after selling KISIC Aerial Survey, did you already know that you wanted to take on a new challenge and start your own airline, or where did that process come from?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was very much a crossroads for me. So um, hmm, back in 2010, before I started, well, just as I started, I guess I was at another crossroads then. At in 20 when Vancouver and Whistler were vying for the Olympics, there was a vision of the organizing Olympic organizing committee to showcase BC's First Nations, and to bring travelers from all over the world, not just to Vancouver, not just to Whistler, but to connect those travelers throughout British Columbia and showcase BC's First Nations. And at the time, I thought, I can do that. That would be so cool. And I was really excited by and inspired with the thought of contributing to those Indigenous communities that wanted to elevate their Indigenous tourism and create economic prosperity in community with the elevation of language and culture, and connecting other people to the land and to their wisdom and their worldview and their voice. And I was really excited about that. So I did a year, I don't know, or so of research and development. It was called Dragonfly Airways back then, actually. And I go back, I went and found a business plan that I didn't remember writing all the years later. And much of those concepts or ideas that I had were still the same. So it didn't move ahead then for a variety of reasons. We had a switch in government and just overall, it wasn't the right time. And so the idea got shelved. So when I sold BC Aerial Survey, like literally getting my wings gave me wings for everything else in my life. And when I sold BC Aerial Survey, I thought, maybe it's time to hang up my wings. It's given me so much, but I just like literally couldn't let go. I'm sure many of you, if not all of you, have heard about how, aviation kind of takes a grip on you and it's pretty hard to shake loose. So I thought, well, maybe it's time to hang up my wings, and I'm just having a little trouble, letting go. So as a good Indigenous woman who's having trouble letting go, what do? You have a letting go ceremony. You have a ceremony. So with myself, it's just me and myself having a ceremony. I said, Teara, just go into each of the milestones of your career. Those really beautiful, sometimes extraordinary, sometimes ordinary times, and just go in along your journey and just remember, honor, and let go. So, that trip to Africa, oh yeah, remember, honor, let go. My first solo, no one forgets their first solo. Imagine that. They just say, cleared for takeoff, and you look beside you and there's no one there. So, okay, remember, honor, let go, my first job, and it carries on. And then in my letting go ceremony that I'm having with myself, I say, remember that time that you were going to, buy a small aircraft that could fly into small communities, and you were going to connect travelers from all over the world with Indigenous tourism. And then I was like, shoot, I guess I won't get to do that. But I got stuck there in my letting go ceremony because I was like, but that was such a cool idea. And so my letting go ceremony turned into starting a business ceremony. And I came home that day and I named it. I incorporated it online, and I secured a domain name, and Iskwew Air was born. I chose the name. Aviation and aerospace is still very much a male-dominated industry. And so kind of going all the way from really minimizing my femininity I'm busy using my hand motions and you can't even see them, but I way back in my career, I really minimized my femininity, swore like a truck driver. I still do swear like a truck driver. That's hung on, but really just wanted to fit in and be one of the boys. And I know that was part of, survival in this industry. And, but I also have some regrets around that, because that's part of the job is to disrupt systems that are no longer working. And thankfully, things are getting better. So all the way to then naming my airline Iskwew Air, which is a Cree word for woman. And I named it that as an act of reclamation of womanhood, matriarchal leadership, which I believe our world is in dire need of, and reclamation of language.
Amazing. So let's talk about kind of what it meant for you to launch Iskwew Air on International Women's Day, and what that meant for you. Chose that day.
Yes. So I'll actually go back a little bit further. I I bought the aircraft September 12th, 2018. And on September 21st, just a handful of days later, I asked the Musqueam peoples for their permission to do business on their territory. So because many people don't maybe are unfamiliar with the protocol of asking the permission of the territory that you're on to do business, many people thought that the blessing ceremony was our launch. So it actually created a little bit of confusion, a little bit of work, because I had literally just bought the airplane. I mean, I hadn't even started the regulatory process, because when you ask a nation for their permission, you don't do it when you're ready to launch. It's not an afterthought. It's not a tick box on your end of process checklist. And so the blessing ceremony, we did get quite a bit of media attention, and many people confused that as the launch of the airline, but we had only just begun, only just getting started. And so then we continued on with the process, with the regulatory process, with getting everything, with writing our manuals. And I chose to do the official launch in March 8th, because it's International Women's Day. And I chose that as an act of awareness and celebration for all women in this industry, and all those that are uplifting and supporting all those that are women identifying. And you'll have to, Alicia, I'll forget the question even. I'll just say whatever's coming to me. So feel free to just like stop me and ask me more about something if I haven't answered the question fully.
No, you're good. You're doing really well. And it was an epic party. I have great memories from that night.
It was an absolutely epic night. But it was also really, I had the week before the launch, had a really, really big setback that literally had me on the floor in tears for maybe the better part of 3 days. I can feel it right now. And so it was actually really hard to feel that afraid, that vulnerable, that discouraged, that disappointed, and stand up in front of the world and announce your intentions and have a big party. It was really hard to do.
Yeah, there's always the good and the bad. So that's great that you're talking about also the hard times that you faced, even though we did have such a massive celebration. I know JR had mentioned too, to just be vulnerable. And so thank you for being vulnerable and sharing that with us. So let's fast forward to 2020. You had gotten your airline started, it was launched, and then COVID hit. So how has COVID impacted your airline just when you were beginning to start?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so those setbacks that I mentioned, part of that was, some regulatory delays that had us we were literally this close to certification for months and months and months and months, and it got stalled. And so we actually didn't get an operating certificate until last October 1st. And, so this is a very long process. And it requires a lot of tenacity and perseverance. And so for me, it was like, okay, Teara, you did it. You've got this operating certificate in your hand. You did it. You made that thing that seemed impossible possible. And all you need to do now is you just need to make it through the winter. We had lots of work booked for the spring and through the summer. We had enough work booked already to be on our way. And so, yeah, the self-talk was, all you have to do is just just make it through the winter. And in the end, at the end of February, it was literally the last weekend of February, the first weekend of March. And I was in Toronto, again, feeling, pretty discouraged. Finances at this point are getting very stretched. The, as you're kind of, going through the winter, just kind of digging deep for that energy to and perseverance to keep going. And I mean, this was a bad thing to do. Not that I can take any responsibility for a global pandemic, but I said to myself, Teara, this is literally as hard as it's going to get, because starting in March, you've got work on the books, and April, May, June, July, every month you've got more work on the books. It's never going to be harder than it is right now. And then COVID hit just a couple weeks after that conversation with myself, and literally in days, all of our bookings had been canceled, and we were hit very, very hard by COVID, as our entire industry is. And in the beginning, certainly, because I was already tired. I was tired. I had myself another great big pity party, and then I started to think about, okay, what can you do? What good can you do in the world right now? How can you be of service to other people? And just started really rooting myself in a gratitude practice a lot, many times throughout the day. It's okay, grateful, back to gratitude every time things are challenging. And then grateful that, I mean, as a startup, I'm already, on one hand, any bits of work that are out there are going to, established operators, ones that have, cultivated, relationships and clients and customers and are well known, are visible. But on the other hand, as a startup, I'm already operating as wise as I can, as lean as I can. And so in some ways, I'll be able to weather this differently. And then, but to be honest, I didn't know that I would survive through this global pandemic as an airline startup. I mean, gee whiz. But about, I don't know, it's got to be about maybe 3 months ago, maybe 4 months ago, suddenly I just knew that we will absolutely persevere through this too.
Yeah, which kind of brings me to my my next question is what kind of work has Iskwew Air been doing during COVID? Maybe you can touch on the airlift drops that you've been doing.
Sure. So we continue to operate. And in the beginning, it was very, I mean, everyone's trying to figure out what to do, what the right thing to do is, how to, how to be safe, and how to also be able to offer service. So we continue to operate throughout and continue to figure out how can we do that in the safest way possible. And then when some of the airlines ceased temporarily their regular service into communities, we got many panicked calls from communities saying, like, how are we going to get medical supplies in and out? How are we going to get food in and out? Now, thankfully, those operators then re-examined their plans and continued to offer maybe more limited service, maybe freight service, freight and cargo, and also made arrangements with communities to try and ensure that they had what they needed. And so that inspired an idea to look at how we could bring essentials essentials, but also like care packages. And by that I mean, what could bring some love and lift to a community. So we did a fundraising campaign that covered just the fuel, and we brought in like, of course, the masks, the sanitizer, PPE, but also we brought in, gardening supplies as, communities were looking at, creating better food sovereignty, especially when you're realize, and not that you don't already know that, but when you are faced with, not being able to have things normal come to your community as they normally would. And so we brought essentials and a care package into Alert Bay, which of course is a very remote area in British Columbia. We went to Port Alberni. We serviced 3 communities in the Tahltan territory, Dease Lake, Telegraph Creek, and it was so beautiful is the right word, to be able to literally bring some love and lift into those communities. So we only went when we were invited by the community, and we asked the community what we could bring that was in service to their community. So it was an initiative that was very much led by the community.
And you guys work together, so that's awesome. And the work that you're doing is amazing, and what's needed right now. So where do you see Iskwew Air in the next 5 years?
Yeah. So COVID has been, oh my goodness, just so full of heartache and challenges for everyone. But it's also created a like a epicenter of opportunity and creativity and innovation, as as the systems are literally breaking down. In this, we have choices around how we want to rebuild. And so one of the things that it's done is invited me to look at a pathway that I hadn't necessarily considered before. And so we have embarked very intentionally on a journey to advanced air mobility. So the next, somewhere in our messages, the next frontier of air transportation, but very much it is like, how are we going to, what we're doing right now in so many different ways isn't working anymore. So how are we working to make them different? And so for me, it's become really clear about how important my role is in working in collaboration with others to rewrite the air transportation narrative, and to rematriate, rebuild, redesign and rebuild a air transportation system that is centered on equity, resilience, and sustainability. And I'm so excited to be a part of that. So we will strengthen ourselves as a traditional air operator. We're looking at, again, this is all, we'll see how things unfold with COVID. But some of our plans to begin service into a small community have been delayed, and I'm hoping that we'll be able to move that plan ahead, perhaps in March, working towards that. And again, always just reevaluating. And so strengthening as a traditional air operator, and also collaborating and contributing to how we together rebuild our industry in a different way. So I'm deeply, deeply honored to be part of the Canadian Advanced Air Mobility Consortium. And now what I see really clearly is Iskwew Air as a bridge between traditional air transportation and the sustainable transportation of the future. And, you know, I was like many other people in aviation, like, I mean, drones are part of the pathway to advanced air mobility. It's just the level of the size and level of sophistication, but certainly understanding the RPAS or drone. I prefer RPAS, but everyone knows what you're talking about when you say drone, remote piloted aircraft systems. So understanding more about that world. And I used to think that the two didn't belong together, right? They were in conflict with one another. But I see it completely differently now. I see that they can work together in unison. They can work together in a complementary way, and that both of those things are important. So looking at contributing and collaborating really in this collective, in this consortium. And I can't say enough about how excited I am. I know J.R. Hammond joined you for one of your earlier series, and he's literally my new best friend. And I'm so grateful for that. So now I aspire to see how, in partnership, because this consortium, you don't see this in aviation very often, where people are truly working together, but this consortium is really going to be able to do incredible things because they're really working together. So in partnership, looking at possibly down the road being a advanced air mobility operator. We are in the process right now of certifying our own AMO, our own aircraft maintenance organization, which I'm super excited about. And that then led me to thinking, well, if we're going to go down the road in advanced air mobility, in addition to being a traditional air provider, then maybe if we're going to fly them, maybe we should fix them too. So exploring what that might look like. So, and who knows? That's all part of it is, I can't know what the future holds. And part of it is just allowing yourself to be in the journey as it emerges. But what I know for sure is that I want to contribute to a better world. I want to be in better reciprocity with the land. I want to do my part to see how we can walk more gently on our Mother Earth. And I want to create a place of work where people belong and where they feel like they belong, and that they're part of something exciting.
Well, that's a lot of stuff that's happening for Iskwew Air, and I'm really excited to see all of that happen, and I hope it happens for you, and it will.
Thank you. We really that information has really only been public for about, I don't know, I think it's about 2 or 3 weeks right now, when the Canadian Advanced Air Mobility Consortium did our global press release. So up until then, only folks on my team really had an idea about what I was envisioning. Now it's all out there.
Now it's on YouTube. So thank you for sharing. So let's move into kind of the graphic novel that's been plastered everywhere on all social media platforms. What was your reaction when you got approached to be featured in the graphic novel alongside names like Ruth Bader Ginsburg, AOC, and Serena Williams, to name a few?
Yeah, can you see how red my ears are right now? Just talking, like they're literally like red hot right now. Usually it's my cheeks that get hot, but my ears are hot right now. Yeah, so that's just wild. I don't even know how something like that happens. There's 18 women. It's a Wonder Woman anthology. So, it's to honor those that are standing, as this is how I would say it, standing fiercely with deep love for what matters. And that is racial, social, ecological, and economic justice, right? Wonder Woman was all about justice. And so being listed amongst these absolutely wild change makers is like, I've known about this for a while, and it's everywhere. I see it everywhere, and it still doesn't feel real. They've actually pushed the book release date, and I feel a little bit of relief around that, because like, look at how hot my ears are, like, because it's just so I don't know, it feels honoring. Oh my goodness, honoring. It feels like a lot of responsibility, and it also is just feels very like strange and surreal.
Yeah, totally. I remember when I asked you that, when you told me, I was like, oh my God, that's so crazy. Like, what are the chances? But so amazing that you're being featured alongside those large names. Your name is also, plastered on that, which I'm so proud to know you and support you in that. So leadership is one of your many strengths. Why is it so important to you to help other women take on more leadership roles? And did you have like a female mentor that inspired you to want to do this, or that you looked up to growing up?
Hmm. Yeah, I get asked that question a lot, and it gives me pause for reflection all the time. So yes, leadership, and actually leadership was born out of safety. So, way back when, with some folks here on the call alongside, we founded the Aviation Leadership Foundation, and it was this idea. I didn't even know I wanted to study then, but when they brought in, tried to regulate safety management systems, they're still trying to regulate safety management systems, but I was like, well, doesn't this regulation, that's like a tricky way to get people to do things, right? Like, in order to inspire people and to lead people and to be able to have everybody in the organization really caring about safety, then that comes down to leadership. And how do we develop that? How do we develop that in chief pilots and directors of maintenance, that their whole focus has been on their technical aptitude, their technical competence, and their technical training. But in order to really be able to make the kind of difference that we want to make in the world with safety or whatever else it is, it's about, in my humble, maybe not me, actually, it's probably not so humble opinion, that we need to develop the leadership capacity of people at all levels in our organizations to achieve whatever it is that we're trying to achieve. So I did, that led me to doing a master's degree in leadership at Royal Roads University, and now I teach in the master's in leadership program at Royal Roads University. And so it's important that we have to have different voices and perspectives at every decision-making table in every industry, or just, we're seeing, if everybody is the same, then we're just only seeing this little tiny slice of the pie, and we're not seeing all of the rest of the things that we need to see. And so it's vitally important that we have underrepresented groups stepping into leadership, and that we co-create the environments for those underrepresented groups. I'm talking specifically in our industry, to thrive. Like, I was on a panel one day, and it was such a great analogy, because they were talking about recruiting women, and it was in a different industry, but the idea is the same. And so they're talking about recruiting women, but they can't keep the women. So then there must be something wrong with the women, right? Because they don't stay. And the one person on the panel, she said, well, if you're in an ocean of salt water and saltwater fish, and you throw in just a couple of freshwater fish into the ocean, Like, what do you think is going to happen? And so we need to make lots of room for diversity and all the kind of diversity in our industry. And I want to see women in leadership roles. And that doesn't, I appreciate, there's so many men on this call that I admire and appreciate their leadership. And it's not taking away from that. It's not diminishing the importance of that. It's just creating more room for other ways of leading that are equally as important and effective. They're just different.
Yeah, diversity is huge. And just hearing, like you said, different people's perspectives, like women and men process things very differently. So to have that at a higher level in leadership is like so important, like you mentioned. We'll move on to my last question here. And then
let me, because I remember there's another piece in there that I didn't answer. I'm going to just answer it very quickly. When talking about whether I had a mentor, I think what happens for me is I'm inspired by different people every day, right? I'm inspired each day. I am learning. I have so many teachers, so many mentors. And I think that that's why for a long time I had a hard time answering that question, because it was like, pick one or pick three. And I just couldn't do that. It's because each day I'm so blessed to have people, different people in my life that inspire me, that motivate me, that teach me, that correct me.
Yep, that's good that you have a team, or your support group is very well rounded.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, sorry, I'll move on to the last question, and then we'll get to questions from the chat. What advice do you have for the next generation of aviators? What wisdom can you offer someone who might be doubting that they can start their own business?
The only person that's in your way is you. So get out of your own way. Actually. And literally dream it, design it, do it. Like dream it and dream it as big as you want to, and then just start designing it. How are you going to make that thing happen? And sometimes it's little bits at a time, and then you just, you do it. You have to, push yourself in the tough times. When the setbacks come, don't be surprised by them. Oh, there you are. I figured some setbacks were coming, and so don't be surprised by them, and just, keep moving through them, and just trust in yourself, believe in yourself, and and get out of your own way.
Solid advice. So thank you, Teara, for sharing your incredible story with the viewers. I think it's so important to shed light on amazing women who are everyday heroes like yourself, especially in the aviation industry, which we talked about is primarily male dominated. We need to support and celebrate women that are thriving and showcase their leadership. So we'll now take the remaining time to go through the chat and answer questions from the audience. So the first question we have here is, what outreach is there to encourage Indigenous youth to get involved in aviation?
So we started a program called Give Them Wings, and maybe I can throw the link in the chat. This is a fledgling organization that we started to inspire Indigenous youth to take flight. That didn't move ahead this past year, but we're already looking to see how we can pick that back up and continue on that journey for next summer. And it's a great question, because I think, there's such a sense of freedom in flying. There's such a sense of, like, you're literally, witnessing the land from a different perspective. And so, I mean, had I been in a small airplane maybe before I was 30 years old, then I could have started 10, 15 years earlier than I did. And I just want for Indigenous youth and all young people to be able to see what's out there and see what piques their interest. But most of all, it's about, you know, what brings a young person's heart to life. And actually any person, any person, what brings your heart to life, and, you know, how do you have the experiences that help you to know or take you on a path for what those are. So I think there should be more opportunities, and I'm going to get together the Give Them Wings crew, and we're gonna try again to do that. There is a First Nations Technical Institute in the East that trains all Indigenous pilots, which I also think is pretty cool.
Very cool. Thank you for sharing that. And yeah, well, maybe we'll get the link from you to share in the chat before we leave. What lessons have you learned from the setbacks in your life? You can just name maybe like one or two.
Yeah. I mean, you learn to choose who you want to be in those times. Who do you want to be in? Like, I'm asking myself that right now in this pandemic. Who do I want to be in this, right? How do I want to show up in this? And so when the setbacks have taught me to know that I can get through the other side. To know I have a couple of my isms, right? Sometimes it's just like, try again tomorrow. And you just call it a day and know and trust and believe that tomorrow will bring something different. And sometimes it's like, okay, try again tomorrow, and then I'll keep and try again tomorrow. But yeah, the setbacks teach you that you're strong enough and you're brave enough, even when it doesn't feel that way.
Okay, we've got another question. What message do you have for young women who don't have a lot of support in their lives to pursue their dreams?
Mm-hmm. Go find it. Go find the support you need. Do it yourself while you're finding the support that you need. And know that when you ask for support of your community, it's not a selfish act. It's an act of reciprocity. It's an act of giving, because when you ask your community for help, for support, it invites the community to do the same thing. And that's actually how we build a community. And it is quite amazing, surprising, and most certainly delightful how community just shows up when they're asked.
Yeah, the tricky part is asking first. I know a lot of people struggle with that, doing that first step. But if you don't ask, you won't receive, right?
You gotta ask, and you have to think of it as a gift, as an act of reciprocity, because from an Indigenous worldview, right, everything must be in reciprocity. And when it's not in reciprocity, the connection breaks. And we see that all the time in our community. So it's actually part of our responsibility in community building. If we're only giving and we're never asking, then we're contributing to the breaking of connection.
Oh, well, I didn't know that. Another question here. How did you decide to purchase the airplane that you did? What other airplanes were you considering?
It's the only one I could afford. Actually, yeah. So I need to be able to shoot. You should catch me when I'm not being recorded. Usually I'm good and feisty then. So I needed to be able to, I wasn't interested in, partnerships are really difficult. And I wanted to be able to do this on my own, at least to begin with. And so I needed to be able to start somewhere that was that I could do that on my own. And so Piper Navajo, it was. I can tell you that for sure I would have liked to have, I mean, it would be great. I would have liked to, start with like two King Air 200s or two Dash 8s, or, I mean, you could just keep going. But it's, I also understand that you need to build things, and sometimes you need to build them from the ground up. So it's what made sense. And the original vision, as I shared with you, was to connect into those small communities that maybe weren't otherwise serviced. So
Piper Navajo it was. So one of your life themes is love. What would the aviation industry look like if it had more love in it?
Yes, that's what everybody wants is we're human beings, and that's one of the beautiful things that COVID has done for us in some ways, is allowed us to be our human selves, right? Like when I'm talking to Transport Canada and he's like, just to let you know, I'm in my closet hiding from my 3 kids to take this call. Like it's allowed us to be human, and that's, as humans, that's what we want. Is we want to be seen, we want to be heard, we want to be understood, and we want to be loved. We just want to belong. And so I think we need love everywhere, and that absolutely love belongs on the Post-it note, if you've heard that story. And it belongs in airplanes, and it belongs in leadership. It belongs at the decision-making table. And in the absence of love, I worry.
Yeah, we'll have to bring out our love buttons.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I see them everywhere now. I try and litter them everywhere I go.
Yeah.
And by litter, I don't mean actually litter. I mean just like, put out into the world for people to wear.
Yeah. So another question we had was, who else is in the AAM consortium alongside you?
Oh my goodness, how exciting. So there is Helijet, Indro Robotics, provincial government, several levels of federal government, NAV Canada, Transport Canada, YVR. There are technology companies, Capital, Nexa Capital, and it's growing and emerging. We just actually, the Canadian Advanced Air Mobility Consortium just released 3 reports today. And so I anticipate that collaboration will continue to grow.
Very cool. That's a lot of different people that are involved. A lot of big names that you had mentioned. So we'll end off with one more question here, and then I'll wrap up. Teara, with so many opportunities and needs you can identify, how do you select what you put your energy towards?
Right? That's really hard because there's so many things that need attention. So I just try and think about what matters most to me, and how do I align myself best with what matters most. And when things are draining my energy, I need to figure out, is this worth standing fiercely with deep love for, this thing that's draining my energy? And then I just need to like double down and get in there, or do I need to let it go? And I also, lots of people are confused about all the different things that I do. But for me, they're quite interconnected, and they often build and shape one another. And but we just have this one precious life here on Mother Earth, and it's a big question to know how am I going to bring the gifts that I have into this world with mindful intention? But I'll say, I just handed the reins of one of my companies, like literally just on Friday. It's not even public yet, to my colleague, and my daughter, Kiana, will be taking the lead on the Raven Institute, which is very exciting for me.
Yes, very exciting. I'm really happy for Kiana and taking on that new role. And now you'll have more time to do other amazing stuff. So we'll wrap up here. On behalf of the BCAC Youth Engagement Committee, I'd like to say thank you again to Teara for joining us today, and to the viewers for tuning in, not only today, but for the past 6 months. I hope you enjoyed today's webinar and the learning series. Stay tuned for updates on what the Youth Engagement Committee will be up to next. And thank you, everybody, and stay safe.